Now I'm excited to introduce our host, Amy Guerrero, who is a creative entrepreneur and runs the Phoenix-based business Sunshine Craft Co. A product designer turned craft instructor, her studio welcomes anyone to try a DIY project or attend an artisan workshop. Named the best creative facilitator, her love for design, handcraft, and helping people explore their creativity merges throughout her career and work. And without further ado, I'd like to hand it over to Amy.
Awesome. Thank you so much. What a wonderful introduction. I'm thrilled to be working with everyone today. I know we'll have some people who are joining us live, as well as people who are watching this after the fact recorded. So I'm going to try to kind of speak to both as we go. Anyone who is watching this live, I'm going to be watching that chat. And I'm going to be putting a few things in the chat as well so that you are able to grab links or reference things. I think the best thing to do first is to show you the project that we're working on. So we are making a mini macrame wall hanging. And this cute project, if you're familiar with macrame, I call it a fiber art, but unlike knitting or crocheting where you would have a tool that you're using to create the project, with macrame, you're just using rope and your hands. So macrame in the simplest sense is just the art of knot tying. So we're going to learn the foundation knot of macrame. We're going to be able to follow a pattern and work on a project, learning where to place those knots in order to create our adorable little wall hanging. So the first thing we want to do, whether you grabbed a kit or whether you have items that you're working with at home, is we are going to go over the materials. So that's the first thing I'm going to be putting in the chat. These are the items that we're going to be working with today. Let's see. Now, if you see in the chat there, the materials needed, we need some cotton rope. So the macrame rope that I'm recommending to work with is 3-strand cotton. So if you are working with just whatever you have at home, in order to pick up the basics, that is great. And then we're going to be working with 6 different lengths of that pre-cut. And then we're going to put our project onto a really pretty gold ring. So if you got the kit, you've got your gold ring, maybe at home you're working with a dowel or a pencil. Like I said, if you have anything and you're just here to want to try macrame, make any adjustments that you need in order to have this project be successful for what you're trying. Now, I have some tape and scissors for trimming at the end or for pre-cutting your macrame cords. And then the last thing we need is the pattern and the reference instructions. So I'm going to be walking through the entire project, but if you want to better know what's going on or have some of the illustrations, I'm going to pop the PDF link in here for everyone as well. It's probably going to come through kind of as a big link, but if you click on that, you will be able to click on over to, I don't know if you're going to be able to see this, with my glare, but you'll be able to look at the PDF and this will have our pattern and all of our illustrated knots. It's going to have a few other things on there, including more resources for after the fact. So a link to actual knot tying videos, as well as very specific step-by-step instructions and additional resources such as where I buy my rope and the similar board for everything that we used today. Okay, so if you have your materials, I have this really wonderful camera view that we're going to be able to use. Now, this here is my top down, and you can kind of see how I have it set up. So I got my project started a little bit, but not too far. So if you're working along at home, go ahead, if you have your kit, take your metal ring or whatever you're using at home to start your project on, and I have that taped across the top to my tabletop. Now, that's why I recommended having the tape, something to secure your ring, but that's leaving this bottom area open. So you can see I already started to take some of my ropes and attach them to the ring. I got 4 of them on here and I have 2 left to attach, which I'm going to show you how. I'm going to show you how to get this set up, and then I'm going to talk a little bit more about macrame, and then we'll walk through the project together. Okay, like I said, I've got 4 ropes on here and I have 2 more to attach. Now, I want to attach them from the center of the rope, and the way that I find the center here is I place the two ends together, so these two ends, and kind of hold them with one hand, and then I take my hand along the length of the rope, and that will take me to the center here. So the middle of the rope, that's what, if we're working on the ring, we want to dive down through the middle, or if you're working with a dowel, you can just go over the top of the dowel, and I'm going to go through the middle and underneath. Now I'm going to reach through the back of this loop, and I am going to pull the ends through. I'm going to demonstrate this again, but I'm going to pull my ends through. The biggest thing is just being consistent with the direction that you do your looping. Remember how I was specific about diving down, like going over the top of the bottom of my ring? Because we're looking for them to be attached consistently along the bottom. So again, I want to find the center of the rope. So I'm going to put the two ends together. I'm going to hold that in one hand. I'm going to follow along the length, and that's going to get me to the center of the rope. This, I'm going to go over the top of the dowel or through the center of the ring, over the top, underneath, and then I'm going to reach from the back and pull the ends of the rope through. And I'm just going to try to make everything nice and tight up against that ring and kind of nice and pulled down towards the bottom of the ring. Okay, if you are working along at home, I'm going to give you a minute to kind of get your ring situated by getting it taped across the top. Start to get all of your ropes attached. So you'll attach each of your 6 ropes individually. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about macrame while you guys get situated. Okay, so if you have the instruction sheet or if you're referencing that PDF, you can see what we did to attach our ropes is called a lark's head knot. So technically you've already done a knot of macrame. You can give yourself a pat on the back. Now, that'll show here that you're taking the center, you're going over the top, and you're pulling the ends through to attach each of your ropes individually. So we're already past step 2. The thing that I wanted to mention about macrame, I have this other kind of sample here, is the foundation knot. So this here is a foundation knot of macrame. This is the square knot. And you can tell that it's a square knot because it's a straight column, whereas this, which we're not going to be utilizing today, is a spiral. We are going to keep our knot nice and balanced. The way that we do this is by doing 2 parts. When we do our knot, there's actually going to be 2 steps to it. So I kind of make a square because it's a square knot. We're going to do part A, and then we're going to take exactly what we did for part A, and we're going to reverse it. And we're going to do part B. That is going to balance our square knot and keep it straight instead of spiraling. So every time we do a square knot, we are going to do part A and part B in order to create one square knot. The other thing I will show you in this sample here, you'll notice that there are 4 ropes that are used to create this. This is a column of square knots all on top of each other. And the 2 middle ropes here, they were not used to tie anything. They are actually running up through the center of all of these knots. And it's the outside cords that are being used to tie around the middle cords. So again, every time we go to do a square knot, we are going to grab 4 ropes, and we're going to put the 2 in the center and use the 2 outside ones to do the actual knot tying around the middle ropes. I'm going to demonstrate how to do a knot. If this is your first time just kind of doing macrame or observing this video, I would recommend maybe watching the first couple of knots, and then there'll be plenty of time for you to do some knots alongside me and give that a practice. If you are joining live, you can always put it in the chat and be like, hold up, I need another one slower, and we can always get you started again. Now, when I get started, especially if you're working on the metal ring, I like to start in the very middle. So I'm going to ignore these ropes on the side, and I'm going to be working with these 4 in the center. And remember, when we work with 4, we're pushing the middle 2 together, and we're knotting with the left and the right ropes. Every single time we start a square knot, and remember the square knot is 2 parts, we start on the left side. What that looks like is we want to make a figure 4 shape. So this left one, if you can kind of see, it makes like a figure 4. So there's it going across, this is coming down. Why I call it a figure 4 is we really want to be paying attention to leaving this space open and available on the left side. When we do our figure 4, this left rope is coming over the middle 2, but we actually want it to be underneath this one on the right. So if we do that setup again, if we lift the right one up and then we take the left one underneath it, that is going to get our setup. And that's the first step. We always want to make sure that our setup is looking really good. Now, we started on the left side. The left rope is making our shape. It's going over the middle 2 and underneath the one on the right. And now the right one needs a job. So the left one made the shape. The right one's job is, if we lift these middle ropes up, the right one is going to tuck underneath and it's going to come up. This is why we left this hole open. We are going to pull that rope up through that hole there. Now you can see that we have the ropes switching sides. You always want to make sure that you still have 2 ropes on, you have 1 rope on the side and you have 1 rope on the side, so they switch sides. And we don't want to tighten down here. All of our knots we are going to be taking up to the top. Now, right here, the reason why I like to start in the middle on the ring is we're going to take it all the way up to the top, to the bottom of that ring. You can see how I'm kind of tugging down or holding the middle ropes. That is going to be helpful. We don't need to over tighten this, but any tightening is going to be out horizontally. We don't want to unevenly tighten. And then I'm just going to make sure that these ropes that we were using to tighten are returned back down into proper order. We don't want one like floating out over here. So we want to keep working with the same exact 4 ropes, but remember we need to do that second part of our square knot in order to keep it balanced. So just like we started and made a shape with the left side first, we're going to be starting on the right side and we're going to be doing the opposite. The right one here is going to make a backwards 4 shape. You can see we're going to leave this hole open. We want to go over the middle 2, but we want to be underneath this rope on the left. So if we kind of start that setup over, if I lift this left one up and I grab the right one underneath it, that is going to get our setup. And remember, if you're having trouble with this, the first thing to make note of is the setup. And this setup is here as well. So there's going to be the left side setup, and this is going to be the right side setup that we're doing right now. So this is the right side setup over the middle 2, underneath the one on the left. The right one had a job, the right one made the shape, and now the left one needs to have a job. So the left one, if we lift the middle up, the middle ropes, this left one here is going to go underneath diagonally, and we're going to lift it up through the hole that we left on the right side. So this left one's coming straight down, it's going over diagonally, and we're going to be pulling it up through that hole. So again, we're not tightening down here, we're going to kind of keep it loose, maybe pulling down on those middle cords if they're getting stuck, up as far as we can get it, and we're going to be tightening by pulling kind of like a medium tightness out horizontally. Now, once you are doing this, you'll be able to see this a little bit better, but what we can look for to make sure we have a successful square knot is there's going to be this left side vertical bar. And again, as you're doing it, that may make a lot more sense. You might be able to see it in your piece better than you can see it on my video. But that's the thing to look for to make sure we have a successful left side, right side. Now, after we use these 4, we want to do a square knot next to it on this side and next to it on this side. We remember every time we do a square knot, we need 4 ropes. So we already used these 4 ropes in our row. So we're done with those. And we have 4 ropes on this side and we have 4 ropes on this side in order to create our neighboring knots. So if I introduce these, I am going to always start on that left side. And if this is your first square knot. You can do yours in the center, but you can follow along with the exact motions that I'm doing. Remember, we're always pushing those middle ones together, and we are tying a knot with our left side rope and our right side rope, always starting with this left side rope. Remember, we're going to be making that figure 4 shape with our left rope, but we want it over the middle two, but underneath the right one. So if I lift the right one up and I grab the left rope underneath it, you can see we have our setup with the left one going over the middle two, underneath the one on the right. We have 2 different jobs. So the left one made the shape, that was its job. The right one's job is, if we lift these middle 2 up, it's going to be tucking diagonally underneath everything, and we're going to pull it up through that hole. So this right one, it's got to cross over this left rope. We're going to tuck it behind, and we're going to pull it up through that left hole. Now, what I want you to pay attention to here, if you're working on the ring, is our tension and our spacing. We want to make sure that the top of our square knots is nice and horizontal. And you can see how this ring, it doesn't give us a horizontal surface. So we want to tighten it up horizontal. I'll show you what I mean. I'm holding these middle ropes so they're not getting caught. And when I take this up to the top, I'm going to have some space right here. If I kept tightening up into this space, then our knot would end up crooked. So you can see here, it would be like a diagonal knot. So I'm just going to grab the middle here. I'm going to loosen that up, and we are going to keep it looser on this side and not tighten it all the way to keep it a horizontal top. Now remember, when we do a square knot, we always have to do our 2 parts. We did our left side, and now we need to balance it by starting on the right side. The right side here, we're going to make that shape. So you can see I lifted this left one up. I'm pulling the right one underneath it to get our setup. Our setup is the right one is going over the middle 2 underneath the one on the left. We want to make sure it looks like this before we continue knotting. The right side did its job, so the left one here needs a job. If we lift these middle ones up, this left one is going to go underneath diagonally, and we're going to lift it up through this hole on the right. And then any adjusting is just kind of pulling up to the top, making sure the middle ropes aren't getting stuck or twisted, and we're pulling out horizontally. That is going to help us find our vertical bar here, which is our measure of success that we've done that proper left side, right side, and we can move on to our next knot. So now we have 2 neighboring knots, and we always want to be thinking about working down our piece. We don't want to be like working out. So that's why you can see how I'm adjusting all of my ropes to be coming straight down. Okay, when we do this one over here, it's going to look the exact same. We're just going to leave a little bit of space on this side to account for our ring. So we're always going to start in that left, and that left one is going to tuck underneath this right one so that we have the setup over the middle 2 underneath the one on the right. The right one, if I grab it and I pull it underneath, I'm going to be pulling it up through the hole on the left. I'm going to be holding these middle cords so that they don't go anywhere, and adjusting my outside ropes up to the top, leaving a little bit of gap here so that we can have a nice horizontal row. Remember, we have to balance our knots, so we're going to start on the right side. That right side is going to make the shape, so it's going to come underneath this one on the left. So you can see the setup. The right one's going over the middle 2. It's coming underneath the one on the left. The left one, you can see I'm grabbing in order to pull it under and up through the right side hole. And then I am tightening this 3rd knot so that we are able to see that vertical bar. And now we have 1, 2, 3 all in a row next to each other. Now, the big thing to look out for is that each knot used different ropes. So we have 4 ropes we used here, 4 ropes in the middle, and 4 ropes on the far side in order to create our 3 top knots that make our first row. Okay, now if you are working on your first row, I we'll let you obviously continue to work on that, but I'm going to say a few more things as we go, because if you have the PDF or you have the printed pattern, this is going to be the directions for where we're going to place each square knot. Now, when we do a square knot, we use 4 ropes and we do 2 parts. So everywhere you see an X, you'll see that an X is across 4 of these vertical lines. Each of the vertical lines is a rope. So you needed the first 4 ropes in order to create a square knot. And each square knot is 2 parts. So every X has 2 lines. So every X represents that part A and that part B that you have to do in order to make a complete square knot. So if we kind of place this next to here, we've got 1, 2, 3 square knots, or 1, 2, 3 X's. And over here on the pattern, we have 1, 2, 3 X's or square knots going across to create our first row. Now, when we go down, you'll see that we have 2 X's underneath, but they are using different ropes. So they're touching different sets of 4 vertical lines. And you can see that there's 2 lines here that are left out and we're not using in the second row. It's kind of like hopscotch where you go like out, then in, then out, then in. We want our piece to be connected and not just a column of square knots. So when we do our next row, from here on out, it was easy to start in the middle. From here on out, I do start on that left side and I work left, right for each of my rows. For the next row, we're going to leave out 2 ropes. So these 2 ropes aren't going to be used in this row. And then the end 2 ropes aren't going to be used. So we can ignore these. And you'll see the ropes that we have left, we have 2 sets of 4. So we need 4 ropes to create a single square knot, and then 4 ropes to create a single square knot. And those square knots are going to be next to each other to create our second row. In the interest of time, I am going to move a lot quicker creating these square knots. So if you are following along live and you're still having trouble with them, pop it in the chat and I can slow it down. Or if you are watching this recorded, you can go ahead, pause, rewind, and take a look at how to do that square knot a little slower. So we've got these 4 ropes to do a square knot with next. Always starting on that left side, I'm going to make my shape. My right one's going to tuck underneath. And then my adjusting, I am going to go all the way up to the bottom of the knots above it. So I'm going to go all the way up to there. I'm going to complete that square knot by starting on the right. That right one is making the shape. The left one is tucking underneath and up through. And then we have our first square knot in this second row. And remember, we already used these 4 ropes, so we're going to push those aside and we're going to use the next 4 to create its neighbor in the same row. So always starting with that left rope, we're going to grab the left rope, go over the middle underneath the one on the right. The right one's tucking behind, coming up through the hole that we left on the left. And we're adjusting up to the knots that we created. Remember, we need to balance that knot by starting on the right side. The right side starts the shape, the left one tucks underneath and up through. And we have our second and final knot in this row. And remember, every single time I do a row, I'm making sure that all of my ropes are still in order because we don't want them to get twisted. If we pull this pattern back in, you can see we just did these 2 knots in our second row. So you can see there's 1, 2 for our second row. Now, you'll notice in the pattern, we have 3 X's on top of each other. You'll notice we have these kind of column sections. You can actually, I told you how we can tell we have a finished square knot by counting this vertical bar. And that's how you can count how many square knots you have on top of each other. So we have 1, 2, 3 square knots. So we're going to do 1, 2, 3 on top of each other. You can go ahead and do them all at once. So you'll see I'll do a left, right, left, right, left, right before I put those 4 ropes down. And then I'll move on to the middle and I'll do 3 square knots, a left, right, left, right, left, right with the middle 4 ropes. And then I will continue with the 3 square knots in a row with these last 4 ropes. I'm going to continue and I'll do the full project for you to see. But if you have gotten a hang of it by now and you're just going to go at your own pace, I do want to give you just some final walkthrough. So you can see here, we've got 2 square knots underneath those columns, and then we're going to kind of taper it as we work the end. You'll notice that the bottom of my piece looks different than just the standard ropes we're using. And that's because, as you are nodding, you may see this happening. The ends of your rope may be untwisting. The rope that we're using is what's called a 3-strand rope. And that means it's created, if you can kind of see, by twisting 3 other ropes, 3 strands together. So the way I achieved the look of the bottom of this piece here was by untwisting each individual rope. First, I trimmed it. So that's again why you need your scissors. You may end up with some short ropes, and you may have some longer ropes. You're definitely going to have 2 really long ropes that were never used to tie a knot. So once you are done with all of your knots, you can kind of trim some really long ones, figure out if you want to trim any shorter to get some more texture, and then you'll be able to untwist everything in order to fringe the bottom of your piece. Like I said, I just wanted to go over kind of some of those final things if you kind of feel like you have this a handle on this and want to kind of work at your own pace. The other thing I will do, again, if you are kind of going to work at your own pace, is give you some links. So I run an Etsy shop. So when you got the kit, it came from the Etsy shop Lost Points North, which is my macrame kit business. I'm pretty sure there's a coupon code to use for 10% off, which is friends. And then I run a workshop studio in Phoenix, Arizona, which is Sunshine Craft Co. So I'll give you the link to that because we have some different kits and stuff available and a few virtual classes as well. So I will give one more link. If you are watching this project and you did not order your own craft kit and you are interested in getting your craft kit, I'm going to leave that up so that you are able to purchase craft kits after the fact. So the last link I will include is a link to the craft kit. You will get the ring, you will get the pre-cut macrame cord, and you will get the printed instructions all bundled together. And then of course you're watching this recording, so you'll have all the resources in order to create your project. So if you are still working on your piece, I am going to finish it up so you can see the full tips and tricks all the way to the end. The next tip I have for you is starting our next row, or our kind of row of columns. So we're gonna go back and start using, remember how we left out these 2 ropes in this row? We're gonna incorporate those back in so that we have 4 ropes that we're working with starting from the very edge. And just like everything, we're gonna start on that left side. We're gonna over the middle, underneath the one on the right one's tucking underneath and going up through the hole. Now, the biggest tip is the adjustment. Remember here how we left a little bit of space, and so the knot didn't angle along the ring? When we adjust this, we want to keep everything horizontal below the row above it. So because we did not use these 2 ropes in this row, the next row underneath is going to need to leave this space. So again, this is just reminding you not to tighten it at an angle, but to keep it nice and straight underneath what we've already knotted and created. So to balance this square knot, I'm going to start on the right side. That's going to make the shape. And the left one is going to tuck underneath and up through the hole. We can tell we have a successful square knot by this vertical bar on the side. And because we're working in columns, you can see the pattern here. We have 3 X's on top of each other. I'm going to keep going. So that means I'm going to start on my left side. And then I'm going to balance it by starting on the right side. Sometimes after you've done this many square knots, your fingers may know what to do better than your brain. So if you get to the point where your brain is like still trying to figure it out and it's like slowing you down, I would say maybe trust your fingers and just see how it goes, because they probably are getting familiar with what to do by now. Now this left one, I grabbed my 4 ropes in the middle. This left one we're going to start with, and that is going to start our middle column. Remember, we want that left side balanced with the right side, and then I'm going to keep going with a left, right, in order to create my 3 square knots on top of each other. And that's going to be my middle column. Like I said, once you get to this place, if you're at the point where your fingers kind of know what they're doing and you're kind of grooving, a lot of people start to comment about how meditative this may be. That's one of the nice things about sitting down and creating projects with your hands, is it kind of turns off a little bit of the brain swirling, and because you have to concentrate to a point of like following the pattern and knowing what your fingers are doing, but you don't have to concentrate so much that it's like hurting your brain. So this is a really fun activity to sit down at the end of the day, give yourself a little break, maybe do it in front of the TV while you're winding down. And again, this size project is really nice because we can tape it to our tabletop. Okay, we have our 3 columns, and the next one, remember we talked about not wanting to just continue columns, and we kind of got to hopscotch it back and forth. The next row, we're going to ignore these 2 on the edge, and we're going to go back to kind of splitting what we have left 4 and 4. So we're going to do 1 square knot here and 1 square knot here. And we are back to single square knots. So we're just going to do a single left side, right side. And once we do this one, if we pull down those middle ones and we pull the end ones, the outside ones up to the bottom of our columns, that is going to help lock everything in and keep it coming down nice and straight and not like pushing outwards. So we locked that one in. We're going to go to its neighbor. We're going to use these 4 ropes for our next square knot. Okay. Now for our next row, this is going to be our final full row. We're going to start with our very edge, and we're going to count 1, 2, 3, 4. We're going to use these 4. We're going to use the middle 4 for a single square knot, and we're going to use the end 4 for a single square knot. And remember, every time we do a row below a row that skipped these 2 ropes on the edge, we want to leave space for them. So when we tighten this knot here, we want it just to be nice and horizontal underneath the knots and the row that we just did. So we are going to leave this space here so that it is sitting horizontal underneath everything we've already done. So there's 1. I'm going to jump to my middle, the middle 4 here. Do 1 in the middle. And if your knots or your ropes are starting to get a little short, that is totally fine. We're getting to the end of the project. And remember, if you have any short ropes, they are going to lengthen a little bit when you untwist them. And it's going to create really fun like fringe and texture if you have the uneven rope ends at the bottom. Another common question I get is where to buy rope, or do you dye rope, stuff like that. We are working with a cotton rope, so you may be able to dye it. Sometimes ropes are like treated with something that makes it hard for the dye to be absorbed. So I always recommend like cutting off a little sample and testing it before you like dunk your whole piece in a dye. But yeah, if you do anything, definitely send me pictures. I mean, send me pictures either way. I popped the links in there to my businesses, but you can find me on social, so Sunshine Craft Co, like on Instagram and stuff. I would love to see pictures, not only of your finished pieces, but if you do anything extra to them, of course. You can see here, so the next row, typically we would have started on the edge, but we are tapering down for a nice bottom finish. So we're just gonna use the 4 ropes in the middle. I'm gonna grab the 4 ropes in the middle for our final knot. And again, if your rope is getting a little short, just be patient with yourself as you do your final knot. This is the last length that you will need to use And you can kind of go ahead and pull pretty tight to make sure these last ones are going to stay nice and locked in. But there's no finishing method here. You do not need to glue. Like, these are not being used as an everyday, like a vest or a bag. Like, it's literally going to be hanging on your wall. So we do not need any glue. When you untwist your ropes, you can untwist all the way up to the bottom of your shape, all the finished knots you have. I've also seen some really creative things where people will untwist halfway up. They'll untwist every other rope. So there's so many ways that you can all be working on the same thing, even the same pattern, but you can adjust your piece in order to look very unique and choose kind of your own adventure of how you want to finish it off. The other thing I will say too is if you have made your piece and it's not looking the same as mine, that is also going to happen, because a lot of what forms the look of macrame is the spacing and the tension that was used. So remember, from the very beginning, I talked about how macrame is the art of knot tying. You are very successful if you are working knots down your piece. That is the goal, right? But you may have more spacing between some of the knots. You may have more spacing within your knots. And you would be really surprised how just those little variations can make a piece look so individual. If you're sitting down and you're doing this with someone else, it's very common for your two pieces to look very unique and individual. And that is one of the fun things about macrame, and why I really love teaching, just to see everyone's variation and everyone's kind of individual thumbprint on their pieces. So I reached the end of the demonstration. If you are here live and you have any questions, feel free to pop them in the chat. Or if you need to see anything demonstrated, definitely pop that in before we sign off so that I'm able to kind of switch over to that other camera view and give you that demonstration one more time. But I hope you had a lot of fun learning some of the foundation of macrame. The square knot is definitely the foundation knot, so you are well on your way to kind of unlocking all the knots of macrame. And yeah, I'll just kind of let you refer to that chat again if you want to find me online. I would love to connect. I would love to answer any questions. So feel free to email me, message me on social. If you have any macrame or fiber art questions, I'd be happy to help. And yeah, thank you so much. Thanks, Carolyn, for having me on. It was so great to work with everyone.
Thank you so much, Amy. This was a great demonstration. I was taking my notes. I learned some stuff too. I'm sure everybody here appreciates you, and thanks for helping our DePaul alumni learn a new craft or expand upon people who are probably already starting. But thanks again, and we'll leave it open for a few moments for anybody to ask any questions. But thanks again, everybody, for joining us this evening. And thanks again to Amy for hosting this great webinar.
Carolyn, have you done macrame before?
No, I have not. And that's why I was like, me and committee members have been talking about this craft for so long, and everybody wanted to learn how to do it. So I literally was looking online, but this was great. So yeah. Thanks for the pointers. And also I think it's just great that you can ship the kits. So it makes it easy. And then we also can, like you said, go to a local store if it's last minute. So this was great.
Awesome. Yeah, I do see something in the chat there. The question is, what are other projects that you recommend for beginners? So another common project that you'll see are plant hangers. Plant hangers is what I actually started because I was in a studio apartment. My bed had to go up against the only window in the place. And so I was like, okay, my plants have to be somewhere close to the window. So I decided to make a plant hanger in order to hang the plant closer to the window where it would get good light. So I would say look for a plant hanger project. I will let you know that there is a plant hanger kit in my Etsy shop, and you can use that 10% off code if you're interested in trying that. There's also just a digital pattern if you want to get your own supplies for it. Another beginner project would be, I did not bring it over here, but I have another project that is the same thing where you're working with a ring, you're working with the square knots, but you also incorporate that half square or this like spiral knot. So if you see anything, and you can do this in plant hangers as well, the plant hanger kit has the spiral knot in it. That would be kind of the next knot to learn. We did the square knot, you can learn the spiral, the half square knot, and then there's like one more knot called like the clove hitch knot that you would maybe see in some kits or projects as well. The other thing too, beginner projects, I do keychains. So if you get smaller cord and you get some like keychain hardware, you can make, you can use the exact same knots we learned today and then add a wrapping knot. So the wrapping knot is featured in plant hangers, and I finish up like keychains with a wrapping knot. So if you go to my YouTube, there is going to be like a URL here, which will take you probably to a playlist, but that'll take you to my Moss Points North YouTube, where you can demonstrate like that wrapping knot that I just mentioned, how to do the half square knot, which is the spiral. And then again, I'll just say on my Etsy shop, I've got the keychain kits, the plant hanger kits, or the pattern for the plant hanger if you'd prefer just that.
Okay, well, I think that's all of our questions. Thank you again so much, Amy, for this. We will definitely have this recorded, so if people want to go back, like you said, and review some of the tips that you gave, they definitely can. And thank you all again for coming out this evening and joining us.